All right, so this is it. This is the first official Aroostook County Experience podcast. I am Eric Gustin, for those of you who don't know me. Supposed to have a buddy of mine was going to kind of co-chair this with me, but he could not make it tonight. As you can see, there is another spot there. We will just, for the meantime, get rid of that, and we'll make this one so it goes over the whole thing. Whoops. Just got to be smarter than my own equipment here. All right. So, there's a couple of things I wanted to shoot the shit about tonight. And before I do, you can see I got a little wonky ass setup here for if anybody wanted to, since I don't have a co-person to kind of, so it's not just me talking and constantly just pushing viewpoints or opinions forth. Like to have a little bit of feedback, and that's why I would prefer to have at least 2 people or 3 people. But that is not the case this evening, so I thought maybe I could figure out a way to get phone calls in if anybody happens to be watching, which I don't know if there's going to be many at first, but if anybody wants to give a call to any of the crap that comes out of my mouth and you got an alternate opinion or viewpoint or whatever, or just a general question, whatever it might be, then you can call me at 207-551-7678, and I am posting that on Facebook right now. Just give me a second here. And there it is. Shit. Okay, so I'm fucking up. But anyway, you'll get the basic idea. So a couple things I want to talk about. One being, just the other day, I was posting whatever comments on Facebook, and one of the things that had popped up, one of my family members had mentioned that they love watching videos and stuff, but they can't take the foul language, that they can't handle the bad words or curse words or whatnot. And that got me thinking, this is in no way an attack against anybody who doesn't like foul language. There's a lot of people who don't. But I think it's really kind of a silly thing to even to even have in your head that there is bad language. For me, there's only bad intentions, and then there's bad intentions, and there's good intentions, and then there are just words. There's no such thing as a bad word. The moment you start, crossing out words that you're not allowed to use, it's kind of a large jump, but to say it's a slippery slope isn't really lying. I mean, it's ridiculous to eliminate a part of your vocabulary because a current paradigm in society deems it necessary. It's just kind of silly to even do that for the most part, because words have really no meaning other than what we design it to have. So a word like walk could have very easily been named something different. Now, we all know what walk means. It means to walk with your legs and walk down the road. But anybody could have named that anything. And they could have named it what we now consider to be a swear word when they came up with the word for that action. If they would have named it something, that's currently considered a curse word, then that would not be a curse word. So the badness is not in the words; it's in the meaning. It's in the hand of the user. It's in my eyes, it's just like fire. Fire can destroy entire cities, and I mean we've seen it happen. But we also see fire cook our breakfast and heat our homes. So it's really in the hand of the user. It's all about the intent. Like I could say something that you would consider to be a swear word, and I can say it in an endearing way. I could also use it in a negative way, but I could do that with any word. It really doesn't matter which word I use. So I could say something like, geez, you're really smart, and be genuine about it, and be complimentary. But at the same time, I could just throw a little stank on it and just say, yeah, you're really smart, and it's a completely opposite. It doesn't have anything to do with the words. It's not what you say; it's how you say it. And when you're arguing about these so-called bad words, it just doesn't make any sense. Especially when the biggest thing I could say is that she didn't. Well, this particular family member of mine, this isn't directed at her or anything like that, but in general, it's just a general discussion about this. One of the things she said was that she couldn't watch any more of my videos or watch my page or whatever it was, which, in her eyes, she's a very religious woman. She's a sweetheart and everything, nothing bad about her. But for me, it just kind of doesn't make any sense. Like I'm not saying that the things that I say in videos are particularly right in line with what other people think, or that I'm particularly interesting to anybody. But if I was to take myself out of the equation and kind of give the hypothetical of a different show to take myself out of it, if this person was really if you were really into The Daily Show, and everything that guy said, everything Jon Stewart says, you're just right in line with it, and everything just speaks to you on a fundamental level, and you're just really into it, and it's informative, and it's right in line with your beliefs, right down to the core, and you're really enthralled with it. But you don't like the language that he uses. So then you decide, well, I can't watch it because of the bad language. That's just the silliest thing in the world, because you're basically limiting yourself to a very narrow scope of either conversations or knowledge that you can gather. I mean, if you're going to think like that, then you definitely don't want to go on the internet, because there's all kinds of nasty stuff on the internet, much worse than swear words. We all know it. There's a very large percentage of just crazy bullshit on the internet. But there's also a very large learning tool that you can figure out anything that's ever been figured out. You can learn all about it. To throw away that tool because you don't like the fact that there's some porn on the internet, that just doesn't make any sense. It's the equivalent of going into a used car dealer and seeing a car that gets like 180 miles to the gallon, and it seats 10 and only costs $5,000, but you just don't like the color. The color just doesn't. I can't get that. It's green. It really doesn't make any difference. The color. So essentially, I mean, words being the color in this. What's the word? Analogy. But more so, the problem is with words being bad, is that a lot of times words can have multiple meanings. You can use them in a variety of different contexts, and some are bad and some aren't. So that's clearly an indicator that the words themselves are not bad, but just the context that they're in. For instance, in the Bible it says things like the cock crowed 3 times. Well, that's a dirty word. But not really, because they're talking about a rooster, and that's just the word that some people use for rooster. More so back then than now, but it's not unheard of to still hear people call a rooster a cock. But it's just a word we don't use as much. The main reason is because we all know what that refers to, and people think that's a dirty word. but it's not a dirty word because it's in the Bible. It's a dirty use of that word, maybe. Maybe that would be a better way to describe it. But, there's so many other ones. Like, I could take a swear word that you consider to be a pretty nominal swear, like motherfucker. Motherfucker is a pretty common swear word, but I can say it in a nice way and I can say it in a shitty way. I can say it, man, that dude's a motherfucker. And that's just clearly a negative connotation to that word or phrase. But I could say the exact same thing and say it in a nicer way, like, man, that guy is an awesome motherfucker. He's one of the coolest motherfuckers I've ever met. And it's just as simple as that. It's a completely different meaning. It has nothing to do with the words. I think the large part of the problem here is that society kind of deems certain words are bad and certain words are good. And it always changes. That's the problem with it. That's one of the clearest indicators that words have no say in the matter. It doesn't matter what the words are. It's just somebody said we're not going to say that anymore. Because probably more times than not, I would imagine a large percent of the usage of the word ended up being in a negative way. Take the words like retard. A lot of people use that in a negative way. Probably not specifically at somebody who's mentally challenged or retarded, but more so making fun of somebody else who isn't, but you're kind of referring to somebody who's retarded. So that's like a newer one that you're not allowed to say. It's not politically correct, and it doesn't seem to make much sense because that word is the best word to use to describe that particular ailment. Retarded just means slow, and that's just the way it is. It's not. I could understand, somebody having a problem with somebody, going up to somebody who's retarded and calling them retard, you're a retard. That. Well, yeah, that's fucking ignorant. But I should be able to use that word in a descriptive way of somebody that I know that is retarded. There's nothing wrong with the word. You change the word to mentally challenged. Well, I can use that in a negative way too. I can say, what are you, mental? Are you mentally challenged or something? And it's the same exact thing. It has nothing to do with the word. People think by changing the name of the condition that you somehow change the condition. And that doesn't apply. It doesn't work. You're just basically giving yourself a new word so that it's fresh and it's not used as often in a negative way. So you kind of separate it but they all become that negative word. If you keep, using it in a negative way, they're just going to hop onto the mentally challenged bandwagon after a while. Same thing with like midget. Midget was that was the term that you used to call people who were stunted in growth. They were midget. And now it's kind of went reversed. Hang on a second here. There we go. The word midget used to be just what you called somebody. And it wasn't, I don't ever recall there being people who made fun of people who were short by calling them midgets. I don't think it was ever really a negative, a word that was used negatively. It was just a way to describe that particular condition. So when you have a word like that, which there was never really any problem with it, but then all of a sudden, one day, the midget community, I guess, decided we don't like that word anymore, and we want to be called dwarfs, because that's the scientific name, or part of the scientific name of that condition is dwarfism. But if you look at that, if I would have called a midget a dwarf 20 years ago, people would have had my ass for that. They would have been, oh, you can't believe you call them a dwarf, because that, at that time, was a direct reference to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then you're making fun. You got the little dwarf over there, And even if you said it in a nice way, well, he's a dwarf, people would have been, what? You mean a midget? But now it's reversed for no reason other than people got tired of that one word and they moved on to the next, so that the stank is gone off of it. And so basically, so we have something to complain about sometimes. I mean, not all the time. That's not always the case, but that's what it seems like to me. It used to be that that black people were black people and white people were just white people. I'm. Let me put this out there first and foremost. I am never been anything but 100% equal rights. I've never been a guy that's been involved in any type of anti-Semitic or racial profile, anything like that. I'm a totally equilibrium guy, you know. But excuse me. But when it was probably maybe 10 years ago, we had kind of a change in what was going on with the terminologies that we would use. With the politically correctness of everything, you weren't allowed to call black people anymore. You had to call them African Americans. And that was a really weird one, because virtually not all, I wouldn't say all, but virtually none of the people that demand to be called African Americans are Africans. They're Americans. They're born here, just like I wasn't actually born here, but I was born on a U.S. Air Force base. But to say that you're African American would imply that you lived in Africa and then you moved to America. Now, Mexican Americans, you could say that, or Latino Americans, I guess you could say that if they were born over there, they moved over here, okay. But African Americans, I mean, there's a very small portion of the population that's actually from Africa. Maybe your lineage is from Africa, but I mean, you don't hear me calling myself English American. I mean, it's just kind of silly. And why would you even want to? I mean, what's the big deal? People. I think the problem is that a lot of people are very racist, and they would use terms like black or the N-word, so to speak. They would use terms like that in a derogatory sense, and they wanted to escape all of that because no white supremacist is going to use the term African American. Which was probably a pretty good fucking play on, they never have to, they know exactly that way if somebody's being, talking to them in a less than decent way. So maybe that was kind of a good play, because I can't think of any white supremacists who would throw in American into their African American title. They wouldn't do that. So kudos to them for thinking of that one. But it just really still doesn't make any sense. Those guys are still going to be assholes if they're going to be assholes. And people that are nice are still going to be nice. It doesn't really matter what words they use. It's one of those things that just doesn't make any sense to me. We put way too much emphasis on what we say rather than how we act. And that's one of the largest things I could say about it, is that people put too much of an emphasis on, what word is important. What word is a lot of women gathered up years back and all gathered around the C word. You can't say the C word anymore. It's just a word. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't affect your mind. Doesn't, cripple you in any way. It reminds me of the old George Carlin bits with the 7 nasty words you can't say on television. And it's been about cripples and black people and white people. Yeah, I'm not white. I'm off-white. Yeah, you're not black. You're brown. But it's just easier than, there's so many different shades of everybody now. It's just an easier way. You're black. I'm white. What's the big difference? But one of his best points were that people who were crippled. Well, you can't call them crippled. You can call them physically handicapped, or he even said he heard of people calling themselves handy-capable, and that's just they're just lying to themselves by making up a different word for it. I'm handy-capable. I can do anything you can. Well, no, you just can't. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are handicapped, it's horrible. If you can't walk. Well, I can do anything you can. No, you can't. You can't walk. That's not me poking fun at anybody who's handicapped. That's just by changing the name so it makes you kind of empowered doesn't really do anything at all. It just, I mean, it just lies to you a little, just that little bit, to make yourself feel better. If that's what you need, then that's what you need. But when we got to deal with it as an entire country or world, where we all are not allowed to say this word or that word. I mean, it's kind of getting a little bit off topic here. We're really talking about swear words and stuff like that. But in general, people changing words to suit their needs and to make them feel better about the same thing, it just doesn't really make any sense. I mean, we've all seen it in jobs that we worked, downsizing. That means firing, but it's a nicer way to put it. It pulls a little of the stank off of the whole thing. It's not less smelly. Mass firing smells like rotten tuna fish, but downsizing sounds like a technical detail in the schematic of the company that we're talking about. It's really the same exact thing. It's just fluffed up a little bit and bedazzled, and they think that nobody's going to be the wiser. It's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of charging $1.99 instead of $2. It's like kind of fooling yourself, but we all know that we're not really being fooled, or at least most of us know. People who don't, that's rough, because you're limiting yourself in how far your mind can push you, because that's common sense that words don't have anything to do with anything, other than to describe a certain thing you're getting across. And that's why whenever I swear, it's just a matter of factly. It's never like in some fit of anger or rage or anything like that. It's just a descriptive way of the way I talk. And I would certainly not recommend limiting yourself to just clean talkers only. That's just really a bad way to go about life. There's too much out there in the pot. There's a lot of people who talk with no swears at all that are completely boring and uninteresting. Excuse me. And then there's a lot of people that are very interesting that talk very clean. But either way, it makes no difference. If you don't like that, then if somebody doesn't like the bad words that are in somebody's conversation, I mean, I guess I can understand it if a little bit. If there's like a 1,000 F-bombs, in every paragraph, then I get that a little bit. But that's no more different than somebody using the same little catchphrase that they use all the time. A lot of people tend to do that. Everybody's got the same things that they say. I remember this one guy used to always say "kid" after everything. That's right, kid. You got that right, kid. Let's go. Let's get over there, kid. And it wasn't a big deal, but it was just like, shut up with the kid. It just gets really old after a while. But it's more of an annoyance than anything else. I certainly would never talk to the guy again, because he was a pretty smart dude. Just had that one little glitch that I didn't really care for, but whatever. I'm probably going to run out of things to talk about. I was hoping to have a kind of buffer between a couple different people, but as I said, that didn't work out for tonight. Next week or sometime this week, we'll get myself and my buddy Brian. Hopefully my buddy John will be by too. Excuse me. So damn. So I'm trying to think of what else I was thinking about earlier today. Well, I can't really think of shit now. This may be a very short podcast. Wow, I'm drawing a blank now. This may be a real short podcast. We're in about not even 20 minutes here, and I'm running out of shit to say. See, Brian and John should have come over. I blame them. Well, okay, we may as well dive into the big one. This is one I got a lot of opinions on. and this may go quite a bit longer than one podcast. I this is religion is this topic. I would prefer to have a counterpoint here. That somebody who actually does believe in whatever religion it might be. Usually Christianity is the one that I generally talk about, because it's not because it's the one I have a specific agenda against, but it's just the one that I know the most about. I know a little bit about a lot of different religions, but that one is clearly the one we pretty well all mostly know about. And myself, I'm not an atheist. But I'm also, I don't believe in any religion. And people would automatically think that makes you an atheist, but not really. An atheist goes a little step farther than I do, and they say that they know that nothing happens when you die. And that, to me, is just as stupid as saying, I know that something does happen. The problem is that none of us know. There very well could be some God or whatever it might be. We have no idea. Nobody's been there. Nobody's been back. Excuse me. Nobody's been back from there. Everybody could have gone there. We don't know. It's the equivalent of saying, I know exactly, pointing at a star in the sky and saying, I know exactly that there's life on a planet going around there. I know all about them, everything about them. They're a great community of people up there. It's ridiculous. You can't know. And that's the fundamental problem with all religion, I think, is that you can't know. We are not developed enough. We're not evolved enough to know. We're not supposed to know. We're too stupid to know. We're in like the baby stages of our species, of our world. We can't know. It's beyond our comprehension. We could never know. Even if somebody tried to explain it to us, it would be beyond our comprehension. It's literally side-by-side equivalent of trying to show an ant how to program a VCR or how to set up your home theater system. It's just, what? They wouldn't even, at the basic core of it, they couldn't even fathom figuring it out, because they're fucking ants. They're not developed enough. And it's just on a completely different plane that they can't understand. Now, that being said, the true religious people will say, well, yeah, but I believe it. That's where faith comes in. And I believe it. And it's all about faith. Well, it's a cop-out. There's absolutely no proof of anything, ever. Ever happening, nothing. There's one book, and there's hundreds of books that counteract it. It's actually, especially when it comes to like things like Jesus and Moses and all those big historical figures in the Bible, that is the only book that any of them are mentioned in. There was hundreds of other historians and writers around in that time. Nobody ever mentioned anything else about it. There was a couple, I think, but they were proven to be manufactured. Don't quote me. I don't know exactly which ones they were referring to. I remember reading it. I don't know. But forget that there was a couple that were manufactured or allegedly manufactured. There's no other known recordings of that. I mean, look, if today, even if we didn't have the technology of the internet and the worldwide connection, if somebody walked on water, there is not one person on earth who would not know about it. And that's without the internet. You would hear about that forever. There would be millions of witnesses. People would come from everywhere. And it would not be even disputable. Back then, maybe it was a little harder to get that kind of mass awareness because there's no connectivity through the whole... But the bigger thing is that there's so many things that you can dive into on the whole religion argument. And I feel bad having a one-sided conversation about this. It's really not fair. But eventually, if somebody's got an issue with it or has a viewpoint to make, give me a call. The number is 551-7678. If you if you got a real genuine opinion and you really think you can change my mind, you won't. But I probably won't change your mind either. Nothing wrong with that. You're going to believe what you want to believe. But the problem with believing what you want to believe, it just doesn't make it true. Never has, never will. I could believe that there's known people in the underneath of the ground, living 500 miles below ground. They're not there. It doesn't matter how hard I believe it. Doesn't matter how many people tell me it's true. Still not there. There's nothing to back it up. There's no evidence. We can't dig down. It's one of those. Religion as a whole, I believe, is a self-reinforcing delusion. There's an all-powerful being that knows everything, living in the sky, and he made all of us, but he made us incomplete. And in order to be complete, we have to ask him to come into our hearts and complete us, because a few thousand years ago, a lady ate a fruit that came from a magical tree, and the lady came from a rib from the guy, and she only ate the fruit because a magic snake told her to. That's the biggest point I can make about it, I think, right there. If you're really religious, you really believe that. And that is the most craziest bullshit I've ever heard. I've never heard a crazier story. The nursery rhymes and the fables that we grew up with aren't as ridiculous as that. I mean, at least in Snow White, it was like a lady with a poison apple. It wasn't a mystical figure and a magic rib and a talking snake and a magical tree and people really believe that. Here's the weird one, too. If you really believe in any type of religion, specifically Christianity is the one I'm focusing on, but if you really believe it, you also believe that Adam and Eve were the first two people on the earth. Now, they were the only two people on the earth. So, where did their kids come from? There's only one answer. Adam and Eve had kids, and that means either their kids had sex with each other, or they had sex with their kids. There's no two ways about it. There was no other people. And it's all of a sudden, like 2 books later, wham, there's a population. And how did that happen? That's how it happened. They had incest. They had to have. There's no other explanation for it. Not that there's any. I don't believe anything in the Bible is real at all. But that's just my belief. That's not my belief. Actually, people that do believe in the Bible, that is their belief. I believe what I can prove, and you can't prove a lick of it. Now, you could argue, I've heard people say, you can't prove you went to high school. Well, I have a piece of paper. Well, I have a piece of paper right here. It's called the Bible. Well, that's just silly. I have a piece of paper that says I went to school. I also can call up 400 of the people that know that I went to that school, 10 different teachers or whatever, principals. There's all kinds of other documents. It's not just one document. It's a bunch of other documents. I've got tons of report cards and this and that. So anybody who makes the argument is just doomed from the start. They can't make that argument. One of the other points that I can make about it is that if there really is like a God or a Jesus or anything like that, if there is a God, it makes no sense at all. He's almighty, all-powerful, but yet he has to go to war with one of the things that he created, Satan, Lucifer. It makes no sense at all. If he knows everything, he's omnipresent, he's everywhere, and he knows everything, then he should have known that the thing that he's going to create is going to turn on him. So why would he create it? It's all part of this big game. It's God's way. He works in mysterious ways. Let me tell you something. If you take people who pray, and they always say, well, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you. Well, when you pray about whatever it might be, so you're praying for a new job, or you're praying for somebody to get better. That's what a lot of people do. They pray for people to get better. I've never heard of it working. It's never worked once. People sometimes get better, but with or without prayer, they sometimes get better. It doesn't have anything to do with prayer. No crippled man, literally crippled, unable to walk, has ever got up and walked because they prayed for him. And even if they did, if he's crippled in the first place, that was God that did that. It was not the devil. It was God. God has the master plan. And that's, the whole thing is an opposition of itself. He has the master plan. He's in control of everything. And yet all this crazy bad shit happens. And people will say things like, well, that's how he's testing our faith. Really, he was testing our faith when he shot up 30 kids in an elementary school. That was a test of our faith, huh? Couldn't he just ask a few questions, And when you pray for stuff like that, it just makes no sense at all. That's the ultimate thing I say about praying is if you're praying, there's only 3 outcomes. He'll answer your prayer, and he'll say yes, or he'll say, not right now, you have to wait, kind of thing, or he'll say no, it's not my plan for you. And you can get the same exact results by praying to anything. You could pray to this ashtray and get a yes, no, or maybe answer because of just the natural way things unfold. That's just the way it is. You can't even deny it. Well, I prayed, what about when you pray for somebody who's terminally ill and they die? Well, it was their time. God called them home. It's so full of shit. It's just a big self-reinforcing delusion. Anything bad that happens, that's the devil. And anything good that happens, that's God working. And I'm just smarter than that. I'm sorry. For people who really, truly believe it, this is taking away nothing from people who really feel that they've been helped by religion in some way. There's nothing wrong with that. I look at it as a crutch, much like anything else, but probably a less damaging crutch than, say, things like drug addiction or anything like that. Those are a crutch to get through. But religion as a whole is pretty decent when it comes to like the value system and the moral teachings and whatnot. Be good to other people. Don't fuck people over. Pretty much. That's pretty nice, and that's pretty well accepted through just about every religion. But what I really don't like is when religion. The only major problem I have with religion is when it is involved with knowledge and technical advancement. That's where religion really it gets under my skin because it's always it seems to be like a purposeful, like an on-purpose suspension of smart thinking, a scientific process, critical thinking, if you will. When you have scientists say one thing because they've done research and they've found out some things, and then religion says no, 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 no. They say, scientists will say things like, evolution is a theory, yes, but it's pretty well investigated. It's not 100% proved, but it's got a lot more on the table than any religion has ever had. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. I don't know if we came from monkeys. I don't know. Maybe. Possibly. Definitely a lot more probable than coming from a magical rib from the stomach of a guy that got created from a mystic being in the sky that knows everything and sees everything and answers all your thoughts. It's just such a... The only reason people even believe in this stuff, too, is just because it's really old. It's just old. It's a couple thousand years old. I mean, if you're truly into religion, you really believe that the Earth is like 6,000 or 7,000 years old or something. I mean, really, with all the scientific evidence, and again, the naysayers against me will say, well, these things have never been proven. Well, yeah, but neither has yours. That's the problem. These things, like how old the Earth is, are hypothesized, but very well documented, investigated, researched, tons of science going into that is pretty well common knowledge. But the true religious person will say, no, 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 no. It's not. We're not a couple million years old as a planet. No, 6,000. Just came out of nowhere. A magical being in the sky made it. So there. It just makes no sense at all. It's almost laughable. And the only reason that people have believed it for so long and such a widespread thing is because nobody told them that Santa Claus wasn't real. That's really all it boils down to. It's been indoctrinated into, especially the U.S., for a very long time. But let's take a step back further. And how did it get to be so popular? I mean, this is clearly the most popular religion in the last couple thousand years, probably. But why is that? The answer would be mass slaughter. They killed the Crusades. We've all heard of the term about the Crusades, but I just started reading some shit that I never really known about it. And man, I mean, atrocities, like literally slaughtering women and children and everybody if they didn't believe in the God that these people were, which was the Christian God. If you didn't believe in that, you were fucked. They were going to murder your entire family and hang you up on sticks right in the middle of the town. Burn your houses down. Burn your whole village. I mean, and religious people will jump right up and say, well, that was those people. That wasn't what the religion was about. Well, that is what the religion was about, because that's what all those people did. And that's what was being orchestrated by the church to do. So many horrible things have come from religion. And it's not to say that there aren't good things. But, as far as when I say there are good things like the moral core that they have and stuff, do you really think that we wouldn't have that if religion wasn't around? I think, I'm not religious at all, never have been. Well, actually, it was a long time ago, but for about maybe a couple of years, and I got really into it, 100%. But I'm not religious at all now, and I have a much better value system than I had back then, even when I was going to church and stuff like that. Just try and be a good person. That's pretty much all you need to do. Do to other people that you like, and you can't always hit it. You could get it 90% of the time, 80% of the time. But sometimes shit just goes awry, and you can please them all some of the time. You can't please all of them, whatever, however the hell that phrase goes. But the major problem I see with religion is when they interrupt progression as far as science goes. Like, certain things will come out, like the embryo stem cell research and stuff like that. And it's like, if you're really you're trying to fight something, we're trying to learn about how to cure things, about how to help things. If you really believed in God, you would never go to a hospital. God wanted you to have this cold. God wanted you to have that cancer. He gave you that cancer. It was his gift to you somehow. Well, it's him working in mysterious ways. I mean, the worst of it is when you see somebody, a lot of people don't really talk about it, but the one sin that you're not allowed to, that you're unable to be forgiven for in Christianity is suicide, because you kill yourself and then you can't ask for forgiveness. So it's the one sin you can't be forgiven for. But and so it's a known fact, when you kill yourself, you go straight to hell. There's no retribution for you. You fucked up. But they never say that. When somebody does kill themselves and you're at the funeral, right in the church where they went to church their whole lives, or where their families went to church or whatnot, well, he's in a better place now. No, he's not. If you're going to call bullshit, call it all the way. If you're going to make this, big, huge falsehood, got to go all the way with it. I mean, really, they should be saying, well, he killed himself. So we all know where he went. He went straight to hell, and there's nothing that can be done about it. That's the religion. But people would just put this blinders on, and they just say, "Oh, no. Well, that's not really the way it is, but it is the way it is. There's no other way about it, according to the religion." But at the end of the day, that just, even a true religious person doesn't, I don't think, really believe in religion. I don't think the most religious person, the absolute most diehard, a pastor of a church or a reverend or what have you, they don't really believe it. Not when it comes into reality. When shit gets real, they just, what? That's not real. And let me give you a perfect example. When the second coming of Jesus, if Jesus was coming here tomorrow, nobody would believe it. I wouldn't believe it, for one. But the most religious person in the world would scoff and just, now they're crazy. And why is that? Is that because this guy thinks that he's really crazy? Or does he really think that that's impossible because you're talking about a mythical figure that came out of the sky? That's impossible. And it's fucking crazy. Makes no sense. That doesn't work. Not in reality. In this little book that I read, yeah, it sounds nice, but that's not real. You can't put that into reality. It doesn't work. You can't do that. It's not real. And even if it was, nobody would believe it. No, nobody. You could stand right in front of somebody, and I mean, it would literally take that. It would literally take Jesus coming into a pastor's house and levitating it through the living room. But even then, there'd be like a little bit, what the fuck am I seeing? Is this really happening? No. But that would never happen because it doesn't exist. Never has. It never will. You can try and deny it all you want, but when you take the fact that there's right now, I think the last thing I read was there was like 1,300 or something like that. I think it was 1,300 that I read. There are 1,300 different denominations in Christianity. A lot, and here's where the crazy thing is: if there are just say round it down to even 1,000. If there are 1,000 different denominations of Christianity, and that's one religion divided up into 1,000 different subcategories, and in order to have a different subcategory, you have to believe something different. You have to interpret something different from the Bible than the other 999 do. So that means they don't know what the fuck's going on. They have no idea. They got a book that even tells them everything that's going on, but they all interpret it into 1,000 different ways. So, but only one can be right. And they know that book is the one thing that's right, but they're less than 1,000% sure. They don't know. Each one of them thinks they know. But there's 1,000 of them. That's ridiculous. Clearly, none of them know. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not knowing something like that, there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe there is something beyond all this. I would like to think there's something. It's possible. Maybe some sort of like an energy thing or something. I don't know. But I don't waste my time thinking about it too much because it's like, what's the point? I'm not going to see it till I get there. And, I'm certainly not going to listen to a 2,000-year-old storybook that talks about, magical trees and talking snakes and burning bushes and, 900-year-old people. I mean, really, that alone, man, 900 years old, come on. It's just the stupidest. If you even swapped the stories, who was it? I can't take credit for this. This is Bill Maher. It said if you even swap the characters and the stories from the fairy tales that we grew up with the stories from the Bible, you wouldn't even know the difference. Was it Jonah that was in the whale, or was it Geppetto? And there was a poison apple in the Garden of Eden, and one in Snow White. There's all these silly connotations. There are 7 little dwarves. There are 3 wise men. You know, and it's all just a big bucket of goofiness that you know, a large percent of the population has been duped. What the Christian religion would have you believe is that everybody believes in Christianity, only because it's been crammed down everybody's throats with every country song and every political address. These have been just shoveled down everybody's throats for so long. It's on our currency. You know, it's everywhere. In God we trust, all this. But that's the actual people who really practice, who really believe in this stuff wholeheartedly. You have to take the whole enchilada. You cannot take a slice of it. Well, I do believe in God, but I don't, you know, I don't believe in this part or that part. You got to take the whole thing. You can't have just a piece of it. It's got to be all or nothing. And that's the way that religion is designed. It's all or nothing. And if you don't believe in it, you are not with us. That's the plain and simple truth of it. You know, getting on the praying thing again, what I really can't stand is when I watch these faith healers. If you ever get a chance, go onto YouTube and watch these hoax. I mean, they're hoaxes. They don't do anything. It's all a big show. And there is not a one of them that's any good. There's not a one of them that isn't a complete and utter crook. And any real religious person would know that. And they would be coming to bat on that one for sure. They'd be saying, yeah, you're right. Those guys are hucksters. And there's not one of them that really can heal people. If there really was, everybody in the world would go to him. Holy shit. He had massive cancer. He was on his deathbed. And this guy touched him, and he got up, and he started walking around. He's been alive for like the last 10 years. He's been A-okay. No cancer, and he's healthier than he's ever been. Then you might get my interest a little bit. Then I'm going to do some digging. But even then, I'm going to do some research and find out about this person. And did this really happen? And did he had cancer, but it was like a really lame-ass cancer. It didn't really do anything to him. And he was only in the hospital because, you know, he tripped and hurt his knee or something, you know. For me, my religion is simply myself. If you try to do your best to live a decent life, and I mean, I definitely didn't do that for the first half of mine, but I try a little bit now. I do a lot better than I used to. But I think if you try to do that and just try to be a good person, then everything kind of rounds out. You know, I don't need religion to do that. And a lot of people think that they do, or maybe that it might help them through some sort of particular, you know, hard time that they might be having. But it really doesn't do anything. It is a nice support group. I can say that. I know a lot of people who feel that that they've been kind of helped and uplifted by that. That's fine and good. More power to you. But don't mistake it for what it really is. Don't mistake it for something that it's not. Because it will never be the thing that you really want it to be. It'll never be truth. If you look at history, there's hundreds of thousands of different religions that have been around, and there's probably hundreds of thousands more that we just haven't dug up yet. Now, if there are, and every one of them, Christianity, Muslims, whatever, all these, you know, even going way back to like Greek mythology. I mean, those were real religions. And for a long period, we call it Greek mythology now. But back then, that was the religion. And you either believed it or you were fucked. You were going to die because you don't believe in the gods. You know, and that was the way it was for a long time. And now, you know, we're about 2,000 or so years into Christianity. Eventually something's going to happen. Some sort of massive inflection is going to happen. All of these religious empires end up falling. Same as countries. They fall over. Religion lasts a lot longer. It's harder to stamp out than a country is. But you look at any religion has only stuck around because it's been forced down everybody's throats. That's the way it's always been with every religion that's been around for a long period of time. It's only been around by force. And then eventually things settle down and everybody's kind of into that religion. And then the next one comes along and stomps it out. But when you got hundreds of thousands of them and everybody's claiming to be right, well, that immediately makes me nearly 100% positive that none of them are right. It's like having a 1,000 keys or 10,000 keys on the ground. And somebody says, okay, pick the right key to start that car over there. And that's the equivalent of me saying, yep, this is the one. I'm willing to stake my entire life on it, my family, my job, everything. But that's the key. That's the one. I know. And that's the biggest problem is people say, I know. I know that this is true. I know it. Well, you can't know it. That's the problem. But people seem to kind of need that to somewhat to kind of get by. It makes you feel like you're not aimless in your life, and you're not all alone in the whole world or universe or whatever. And I think, in that respect, it can be helpful. It's kind of the equivalent of having somebody to talk to versus being into solitary confinement. It's a need that we have to feel like we're not just aimlessly wandering around. There might be some kind of all-powerful purpose, but I seriously doubt it. I think we're just here, and the purpose we have might be so utilitarian and so stupid. We might be just simply here to fertilize the ground. That might be our end goal job. I definitely am a firm believer in the theory that there's a very cyclical thing going on here. I remember when I was in junior high, I used to point out that the solar system looks just like an atom. It is exactly the same thing as an atom. It has a power source in the center, and it has electrons whizzing around it. And that's essentially what I think the solar system is. It's just one big atom. And then that, combined with all the other billions of other atoms out there, we make up something. And then that something lives on a planet. And that something is made up of a solar system. And then it just keeps on going on and on and on. It's kind of a little bit, but there's no proof to it, but it's a hell of a lot more believable. The diagram's right there. There's the solar system, perfectly round. It's got, well, it used to have 9. Now it has 8 planets going around it. There's your electrons. There's the power source in the center. Makes a lot of sense. A lot more sense than invisible people that know everything. To me, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just stupid. It makes no sense that all the other burning bushes and seas parting and babies floating down. One of the things I really can't stand about one of the stories in the Bible. This is one that I particularly didn't like. Most of them all were decent moral stories. There was a meaning to them. But one of them I particularly didn't care for was I can't remember the actual names of the people, but we all remember it was Sodom and Gomorrah, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the story kind of went like the guy is in his house with his wife and his daughters, and 2 strangers come into town. They stop in, they invite him in for dinner, and then all the guys in town came up to the door and said, send out those 2 guys so we can have sex with them. And said so we can lie with them, but that's what they meant. And the moral of the story is supposed to be, well, men are not supposed to have sex with men, which is fine and good. But they went way too far with it, because what the father did was unacceptable, and it was just a horrible, horrendous act. He said to those guys out there, no, please don't take these men. because they were going to forcibly enter the building and take the men out and screw them. And they said, please don't take these men. Take my daughters. Take my wife. Please do what's right. Take my daughters and my wife. My daughters. Is whatever, 12-year-old daughters, whatever they were. Ridiculous. This guy is painted as the hero of this story. And that's the ultimate craziness of the whole thing. Don't even get me started with the Catholic religion. I mean, when you deny, especially a man who is hardwired to be horny as hell, virtually all the time, you take a guy who's hardwired to do that, and then you completely get rid of the ability to have any physical contact with any women. It's no wonder that you're having all these problems with priests molesting the altar boys and stuff. And it happens a lot more frequently than we hear about, believe me. When you put something like that into play, that's a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm not saying that those priests have an excuse, but there is a reason, and that is for sure it. That's something that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to never contact anybody in your entire life. That's ridiculous. It's insane to just recuse yourself from all physical contact. That's the dumbest thing anybody could ever do. I mean, people go literally crazy just from not being able to have verbal contact. You look at people that get locked up for 24 hours a day in segregation and jails and stuff. They go crazy after X amount of time, depending on the person. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, and they're still doing it. And they just hide. They just hide it. No, nothing happened here. They try to bury it under the rug, and they do more often than not. But even now, we've heard about so many of the ones that have gotten out that now we just kind of, oh yeah, that happened again. That's the way that, yeah. It's no surprise anymore. It's not even a shock to the system at all. It's just simply, that's par for the course. Priests molesting little boys. That's the way it goes now. We all know it. Now I'm all wheezing because I smoked too many cigarettes. Excuse me. So, that's one of the biggest ones I can't stand, though, is that story about the guy who said, "Please take my daughters." That's shitty, and he's supposed to be the hero of the story. That was the worst part about it. Not the fact that he did it, but that the people who wrote that were clearly saying, "Hey, this is the way you're supposed to be." I get the moral of the story, but the way they got there was just horrible. They did not need to go that far. They were going so far to prove a point, I guess, because at the time there was probably a lot of that in the Roman area and Caligula and all that kind of stuff. There's a very big, wide open sex pot going on there in certain areas of the world, and they wanted to put the kibosh on that, I guess. So that seemed to be a fairly smart thing to write. Maybe a bit extreme, but whatever. But that kind of gets me back to the when you get into like the Ten Commandments and stuff. One of the things it says is thou shalt not lie with thy brother or sister or something like that for incest. I don't know which one it is, but it says that. That's one of the rules that God has. But yet, back in Genesis, they had to. That's what they did. And I asked a preacher about that a long time ago. And he said, well, that was before God made the Ten Commandments. So back then, it wasn't one of the Ten Commandments. Essentially saying, back then, it was okay. It was totally fine for them to do that. That's good, no problem. But what that really does is make God fucked up. He messed up. He screwed up, and he's not supposed to. He's supposed to be perfect, right? He's supposed to know everything. If he knows everything before and after it happens, how come he didn't know he was going to write the Ten Commandments? The whole thing is in opposition of itself. It doesn't make any sense at all. It never will to me. And I've read it back to front. I know virtually everything there is to know about that particular religion. It just doesn't work. None of them do on a fundamental level, but particularly that one, I can call it out on so many different levels, and I call bullshit. The whole thing's just a big crock. I always thought it funny that way back the priests were the rich guys. They were the guys with all the gold and all the silver and all the nice clothes and the big, huge Vatican-style buildings and churches. And they would ask for sacrifices because God needs a sacrifice. And what would they sacrifice? Nice, tasty, moist, tender morsels of lamb. That was so funny that nobody caught on to that. Like, wow, you didn't catch on to that? That they're probably having a nice lamb dinner. The tastiest meat you can find. The best. Nothing but the best. It's for God. So nothing but, don't give them the B grade stuff. Bring the best. The other one I never really cared for either was it was something about it's easier for a man or for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven, something like that. And that phrase was from a story that basically it had a poor person and a rich guy, and they were both donating to church or to Jesus or something like that. And the rich guy gives him like $500 or whatever, and the poor guy, and the rich guy had thousands and thousands of dollars, but he gives him like $500, and the poor guy only gives him like 50 cents, but it was everything he had. That he didn't have anything else but that. And he said that this guy's contribution was worth more because he gave more of himself. And when I remember hearing that story when I was a kid, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. It makes sense. It's better to give more of yourself. But the real moral, now that I'm a little older and a little wiser, the real moral is not, hey, give us a lot of money, because the real moral seems to be that we don't want a lot of money. We just want everything you have. Everything. So, and that sends that message to the rich folk too, and you have to just give it all, because that's the one thing about religion for sure. They always ask for money, no matter what it is. They always need money, and they always need just a little bit more. It's never enough. That was an old Carlinism too. He couldn't understand why God just couldn't handle money very well. He's all powerful, all knowing. He's everywhere, omnipresent. Just can't handle money for some reason. And they definitely always need a little bit more, no matter what it is. Now, it's not to say that some of it doesn't go to good things, but for most part, it just goes into a fund, and like a big slush fund, and it gets voted on by people at a church, and they get to improve their church. If you really believed in that religion, you'd kind of know that you don't really need a church to go to. If you're just going to believe it, and worship on your own time at your own house. You don't need it. You don't need a building. It's kind of, and that is an institution. When you say it's not about money, but yet you demand that you be tax free, then it is very much about money. Now that's not taking anything away from the people who are like preachers. I have good friends who are preachers and pastors and reverends, and that's taking nothing away from them. I'm not saying that they're evil people. They've been duped like everybody else. So they're just following the system that's been put in play, and basically the whole thing has been designed to to basically take advantage of a certain group of people and a very large group of people as a whole. But for the real hardcores, the real church goers, the ones that go every day and they love it and they really practice it, it's not as big of a number as you would think. I highly doubt it. there are a lot of people who say they believe in their religion, but none that really, not none, a very small percentage, I would believe that really faithfully, are gung ho. At the very least, I wouldn't even say a small percentage. I don't know the numbers, but I would definitely say a different percentage. If you took a poll of so many, I'm not even going to get into polls. That's too much. I don't want to throw out stats that are completely fictitious. But in any case, it's definitely a different number. It clearly has to be, especially in the last several decades. It's just tapered off so much. There used to be a very large religious presence in the country and in the world, and it's just not that way anymore. And I think a large part of that is because of things like the internet and the massive availability of information. With that, you can call out bullshit so much easier now. Guys like Ted Haggard are just called out. And the crazy thing is, he's back into the same religion. That if you don't do anything else, look up Ted Haggard. He was like a Jimmy Swaggart, kind of TV evangelist. He was he had like a congregation of like 16,000 people, huge, and they they were always against the gay agenda, and they were trying to push hard to put laws into effect in their states and this and that. And meanwhile, the whole time, the guy was smoking crystal meth and having sex with gay prostitutes and doing all kinds of other drugs or whatever else. And they caught him. The whole thing was on the news. I've watched a few YouTube videos about it where the gay hooker guy came on I think it was like CNN or something like that, or Larry King, whatever, and he was calling him out, and the guy denied it, and it was just a big fiasco. And then he ended up coming good for it. He said, "Yeah, no, it was me," and then the church let him back in. They said they cured him of his. It was the stupidest thing ever, and I don't know. I just don't like it when they're phony like that. When if you're gonna be a Jimmy Swaggart guy or Roberts or whoever, practice what you preach. But I mean, those guys are straight out after your money. They prey. They're like telemarketers. They prey on old ladies and old couples, or just very naive people in general. And that's particular. That's not religion as a whole. That's particularly the televangelist guys. The only reason, look at the time slots that they're on. They're on in the middle of the day. When grandma's sitting there watching TV, she's still awake. It's not 4:30 yet. She hasn't fallen asleep on the couch. Just really shitty. The whole area. There's a new guy out now too. I can't remember his name, but he's the exact same as all those other guys, and they have the biggest fucking church I've ever seen. It's beautiful. It really is. It's amazing. And they have one of the biggest. I think it was like 10,000 people or something like that in that one church. It was ridiculous. The place was a stadium, and he claims that he's not a guy like Jimmy Swaggart and all of those guys. He claims that they don't ask for donations. Well, when you're involved in a big religious organization like that, people know they have to donate. And if you don't ask for donations, when you got 10,000 people there and that plate goes around and everybody puts a few bucks in it, you're making some money. And this dude's got a fucking amazing house. It's unbelievable. And those, all those other people are giving him $10 and they're struggling to make their electric bill. But he's got a $1 billion home. Or not $1 billion, excuse me, multi-million-dollar though for sure, if you've ever seen it. Let me check this out right quick here. I remember seeing him on Oprah, and she's another Excuse me. Oh, Joel Osteen. Or Joel Osteen? Osteen? Joel Osteen. Yeah, that dude. If you ever get a chance, take a peek at that guy on, I don't know, Google him or something. It's ridiculous. And I don't even think I doubt that he believes in the religion itself. But I think he also does believe that he's making a fuck ton of money. There's no doubt about it. When you got millions coming in and you can buy $1 million house and you have the best clothes, you got Armani suits and alligator shoes and all, brand new cars, and you don't work. I mean, I'm sure there's work involved. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there is. But it ain't like you're working that much harder than, the little old lady who's working a shit job somewhere part-time because her Social Security benefits aren't enough because her husband died too early, and she's giving you $100 of her money, and she doesn't have the $300 to make the electric bill for the last 3 months because she's been late and she can't pay it, and you're taking that from her, and that's so fucking shitty. How shitty of you, Joel Osteen. Fucking douchebag. And I'm sure him as a person, he's super nice. I'm sure if you meet him on the street, he's a great guy. Hey, how you doing? Try to get you to come over to the church. Come over and check out the church. Fuck you and your church, man. You're a bad person. Because there's no doubt about it. You clearly know that you're robbing people that need that money that they've worked hard for, so that you can get everybody together and dance around with you in a church. It's just really, really shitty. You don't need a church that big. And, I understand that offering plates go around in a church. I mean, I've seen it 100 times. I understand that plates going around. They got bills they got to pay. But not very many. And I think what they should do is after the bill's paid, and even after the pastors get paid and everything else, they should have a day where they give it back to the people. Really. If there's nothing really major coming up in the church's budget, and there's 10 grand in back there, well, that Sunday, there should be a $100 prize underneath everybody's seats, or a $10 prize, or whatever it might be. That would be really something. But you'll never see a church do that. Never. Give money back to the people who got us all this? No way. That sets a bad precedent. That means we might have to do this on a regular occasion. Seriously cut into our money. We can't do that. That's not going to do anything. Like that $20 is really going to help them out. Well, for a lot of them, it probably would. I don't know. That's just my viewpoints on religion. I think religion is the biggest, most elaborate sham hoax of all time. To those of you who really believe it, I really feel sorry for you. And I'm sure it's just as sorry as you feel for me. Because I know anybody that I ever have this conversation, oh, well, I'll be praying for you. Well, go ahead. I'll be praying to my gallon of milk for you because it's going to do the same thing. It's not going to do anything. Whatever happens, happens. And it's going to be yes, no, or maybe. It's just as simple as that. You can't even argue it. One of the other little points I could make is that Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's a pretty big deal, right? I mean, that's amazing. What, it's a virgin birth. If that happened now, it'd be all over everywhere. So clearly, that was a big part of that story, and yet it's only mentioned in 2 of the Gospels. It's only mentioned, I can't remember which 2. I'm drawing a blank on that. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and only 2 of them mentioned it. And that led me to believe that, okay, there was a collaboration of writers. Now, these 4 guys were never supposed to have met each other. They were just 4 different accounts of these 4 guys and their knowing Jesus. They hung around with him and walked around and whatever. But they never knew each other. Well, they would have had to have known each other because 2 of them left out the biggest part of the story. It's a pretty big, important detail to leave out. And the only reason they would have left it out is because why would you want to get so repetitive? And in one of them, they barely mentioned it. Barely. It was just like a side note. Like, oh, yeah, we better put that in there for that one, you know? Is just... I mean, if I was writing a story about a guy who came from a virgin and walked on water, I don't think I'd leave any of that out. Oh, yeah, virgin birth. I forgot about that. Shit, I should have put that in there for the final cut. You know, this doesn't make any sense at all. The whole thing's a big pot of stupid, I think. But that's just me. I really wish somebody else could be here to kind of counterpoint, like a bounce back and forth with even somebody who is actually a real religious person. That would be the ultimate best. It would be I'm pretty sure it'd be a pretty well informed debate, and I don't think obviously I'd hold back my tongue a little bit because I don't want to be rude or offensive. But this is my opinion spewing forth, and if you don't like it, don't fucking watch it. I don't really care. But if you have an opinion, I'm more than welcome to, I'm more than happy to listen to it and take it into account. There's been several times where I've been kind of proven wrong or made to think things in a slightly different way than I already did. And that's what I particularly enjoy about doing these videos or podcasts or having conversations with anybody, is that any interjections from anybody else is just another source of information for me. A lot of times it can be just BS that's just like, what? I'll shuffle that in the crazy pile. And a lot of other times I'm like, wow, I never thought of that way, and that makes a lot of sense. Let me look that up. Very, very good point that I could make that happened. I've mentioned it a few times. The reverend at the church that I go to, or that I occasionally go to, my daughters go to the church. I just go sometimes to appease my family and my daughters. But even the reverend of that church, I'm very good friends with him, and he knows my beliefs and I know his, and we respect each other quite well. And he's a pretty cool cat. And we were having a long debate one night about religion and about science, and I said, look, you're already dead in the water. They've proved that we're millions of years old, that the Earth is 1 million years old at least. It's like 13 million or something like that. And I was like, carbon dating has got it pretty well figured out. And he started schooling me on that. He's like, no, carbon dating only goes back a couple hundred years. It's not a dead-on science. And I was like, really? So then I went that night, and I went on to Wikipedia, and I learned everything there was to know about carbon dating. And fucking turns out he was right. He was right. It only goes back about 200 years. Anything after that is kind of an educated guess. But here's where I differ with him. I applaud him for actually digging in and doing a little bit of the research, for sure. He's a very knowledgeable dude. But here's where I differ a little bit in that. Yeah, okay, maybe it only goes back 200 years with absolute certainty. After that, it's an educated guess. But that's the problem. It's an educated guess. And when hundreds and thousands of educated scientists are saying, okay, well, this is an educated guess between all of us, but we all think, we're all doing these different calculations, and we think it's somewhere around 13 million years. And you get these people who believe in an invisible man in the sky saying, no, it's only 6,000. That's it. That's all it is. You're crazy. Crazy. In your graphs and charts, and your scientific method is crazy. Don't you know there are talking snakes, and there are women that came from ribs? Hey, come on. Let's get real here, Just, it's I don't know. To me, it's just a religion ends up being a complete and utter waste of time for me. For a lot of people, they can use it to their advantage, and they can make themselves feel better about whatever situation they're in. But I don't recommend that as the best course of action. I think if you're smart and you're decent to people, then you'll live just as good a life as you ever could have lived. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I'm going to tidy this one up real quick. because I'm running out of stuff to talk about, and I don't want to bore the hell out of everybody. So, for those of you who did tune in, thank you much, and like and share and all that shit. And stay tuned next week, and we will get. Hopefully, we'll get Sunday at 9 o'clock once again. This has been the Rooster County Experience Podcast. Be sure to stop by on Sunday at 9 o'clock. We'll see you guys. Bye. And hopefully, Brian and maybe John will be out. Maybe we'll have a guest by too. See ya.